Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be looking at AQA AS Psychology 2023 Paper 1 Exemplar Answers for Memory, which you need to know for AQA Alevel Psychology. I hope you enjoy this video and find it helpful. Let's get started. Please note that these answers have been produced with knowledge of the mark scheme but have not been approved by the mark scheme themselves. There are 3 assessment objectives, AOs, in psychology. In this video they are color-coded. AO1 Knowledge, purple. AO2 Application, blue. AO3 Evaluation, red and green. In AS there are 12 mark questions, instead of 16 mark questions. For the purpose of this video and to avoid confusion for Alevel, the 12 mark questions have been turned into 16 mark questions. Question 1. Which one of the following descriptions best describes semantic memory? Shade 1 box only. 1 mark. A long-term store for knowledge of the world, not requiring conscious effort to recall. B. A long-term store for knowledge of the world, requiring conscious effort to recall. C. A long-term store for personal events, not requiring conscious effort to recall. D. A long-term store for personal events, requiring conscious effort to recall. B. A long-term store for knowledge of the world, requiring conscious effort to recall. Question 2. Briefly outline 2 criticisms of studies into short-term memory. 4 marks. A limitation of Peterson and Peterson's study is that it lacks ecological validity, meaning that the findings may not be applicable to real-world situations. The study was conducted in a controlled laboratory environment where participants were asked to memorize trigrams and then perform a distraction task. This artificial setting does not reflect how memory is used in everyday life, where people often remember more complex information and are influenced by various external factors. In real-life scenarios, memory tasks are usually more meaningful and context-rich, which can enhance recall. Because the study's conditions are so far removed from typical memory tasks, it raises questions about whether the results can be generalized to how memory functions outside of the lab. This is a limitation because it suggests that the conclusions drawn from the study may not accurately reflect how memory operates in everyday situations. The lack of ecological validity indicates that the findings could be influenced by the artificial nature of the experimental environment, which fails to capture the complexities and nuances of real-life memory tasks. As a result, the applicability of the research to practical scenarios is questionable, limiting its overall significance in understanding memory processes. A limitation of Peterson and Peterson's study is that it lacks mundane realism, meaning that the tasks participants were asked to perform do not closely resemble activities they encounter in daily life. In the study, participants memorized trigrams in a highly controlled laboratory setting, which is not reflective of how people typically use memory in more natural contexts. Everyday memory tasks often involve recalling meaningful information, such as names, events, or experiences, rather than random strings of letters. This lack of connection to real-world memory tasks raises concerns about the applicability of the findings. If the tasks do not mimic real-life situations, then the results may not provide an accurate representation of how memory functions outside of the laboratory. This is a limitation because it suggests that the conclusions drawn from the study may not be applicable to how memory works in everyday life. The lack of mundane realism indicates that the tasks used in the study do not reflect the complexity and meaningfulness of real-life memory tasks, which could lead to an oversimplified understanding of memory processes. As a result, the findings might not accurately represent how individuals recall information in more familiar and context-rich situations. Question 3. Describe how post-event discussion can affect eyewitness testimony. 4 marks. Post-event discussion occurs when there is more than one witness to an event. Witnesses may discuss what they have seen with their co-witnesses or with other people. This influences the accuracy of each witness's recall of the event, as information, which may be misleading, is added to a memory after the event occurs, reducing the accuracy of the witness's recall. This can cause memory conformity, where individuals' memories become similar to those of others after discussing an event. This can lead to the incorporation of incorrect details into one's own memory, false memory, where a person recalls something that did not happen or recalls it differently from the way it actually happened. Reconstruction, the process by which memories are pieced together from various sources of information. Rather than being a perfect playback of events, our memories are reconstructed using fragments of actual events, combined with our own interpretations, emotions, and external influences. Confabulation, the creation of false memories without the intention to deceive. Individuals who confabulate may fill in gaps in their memory with fabricated details, believing them to be true. This often occurs unconsciously and can be a result of various neurological conditions or brain injuries. Caleb is learning about models of memory. Last week the teacher taught the class about the multistore model. This week she is teaching the working memory model. Caleb is now finding it difficult to recall any of the information about the multistore model of memory. Question 4. Using your knowledge of interference as an explanation for forgetting, explain Caleb's difficulty. 3 marks. In Caleb's case, retroactive interference is occurring. The newly learnt information of the working memory model, WMM, is affecting recall of the older information about the multistore model, MSM. In this case, interference is more likely to occur because both topics were similar, models of memory. There has also only been a week in between the learning the two models, and so they may have become confused, causing Caleb to forget the first model. Question 5. Briefly evaluate the use of the cognitive interview technique. 4 marks. A strength of the cognitive interview is that there is research to support its effectiveness. The effectiveness of the cognitive interview can be shown in comparison to the standard interview by looking at the amount of correct information recalled. A meta-analysis by Cohn-Ken et al., 1999, combined the data from 50 studies. The enhanced cognitive interview consistently provided more correct information and increased recall and correct information by approximately 82% compared to the standard police interview used by police. This is a strength because it suggests that the cognitive interview is useful and has real-world applications, especially in the world of law enforcement, where the police can use this to glean more information from witnesses that may prove crucial to solving crimes and reduce miscarriages of justice. However, Cohn-Ken et al., 1999, also found that 61% of the information gained through the cognitive interview was either incorrect and inaccurate information. This is a limitation because it suggests that information gained from the cognitive interview has a high chance of being inaccurate and therefore unreliable, which jeopardizes the appropriateness of the cognitive interview and further suggests that the police need to treat all information collected with caution. However, Cohn-Ken et al., 1999, study lacks population validity as the majority of the participants involved in the meta-analysis were college students, who are not representative of the wider age range within society, e.g. senior citizens. The study therefore also lacks internal validity, with age being a confounding variable, as other research has found that age affects memory and recall. Park et al., 2002, Raz et al., 2005. This is a limitation because it suggests that the study may not be accurately measuring the effectiveness of the cognitive interview but instead how one interview technique affects a certain age range of people. Question 6. Describe and evaluate the working memory model. 8 marks. Baddeley and Hitch, 1974, proposed the working memory model, WMM, to account for some of the limitations of the multistore model. They suggested that short-term memory, STM, is an active process used when temporarily storing and manipulating information and consists of multiple stores, not just one unitary store like the MSM suggests. The model consists of 4 components, each of which is qualitatively different, especially in terms of coding and capacity. The central executive, CE, controls the WMM and coordinates the other slave systems after reviewing information from the sensory register. It is used when dealing with any task that makes cognitive demands and has a limited capacity and can process any modality of information, modality-free. It monitors incoming data, making decisions as to what information is important and needs attention. It then allocates the information to one of the three slave systems: visuospatial sketchpad, phonological loop, episodic buffer. The phonological loop, PL, processes auditory, speech-based information and preserves the order in which the information arrives. The visuospatial sketchpad, versus, processes visual information through the senses or visual long-term memory, patterns of recognition and spatial information consisting of the relationship between things and perception of movement. Episodic buffer is used to aid CE when it becomes overwhelmed, integrating the visual, spatial and verbal information processes by other stores and maintaining a sense of time sequencing, basically recording events, episodes that are happening. It can be seen as the storage component of the CE capacity is limited of about 4 chunks, Baddeley 2012. The VSS, PDTEL and episodic buffer then transfer information to the long-term memory. A strength of the WMM is that it is supported by case study research. Challis and Warrington, 1970, carried out a case study of patient KF, who was injured in a motorcycle accident. Following his accident, KF could recall stored information from his LTM, however KF had a severely impaired STM, particularly for verbal, acoustic, information, when KF read digits himself, compared to visual information, when someone else read digits to KF, suggesting selective impairment and indicating that different types of information may be processed and stored differently within STM. This is a strength because it suggests that the working memory model can account for variations in memory performance based on the type of information being processed. The selective impairment observed in KF indicates that short-term memory is not a single store but consists of different components that handle verbal and visual information differently. This supports the idea that memory is more complex than previously thought and that different modalities may operate independently within the short-term memory system. A limitation of the WMM is that the theory suffers from experimental reductionism. The WMM attempts to examine complex behavior by relying on isolated variables operationalized in laboratory experiments. Furthermore, the WMM adopts a nomothetic approach since it attempts to generate universal laws regarding how STM processes information, based on dual task studies conducted under laboratory conditions. Using an ideographic approach, such as was used by Oliver Sacks with Clive Waring, Sacks, 2007, and Brenda Milner with H.M. Milner, 1957, can shed light on how STM loss can vary between people. This is a limitation because it suggests that the working memory model may oversimplify the complexities of human memory by focusing on controlled, isolated variables rather than considering the individual differences and contextual factors that can influence memory performance. By relying heavily on laboratory studies, the working memory model may not fully capture the nuances of memory in real-world situations, making it less applicable to understanding how memory functions in everyday life. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Bye.